Why do we snack? Because we have nothing better to do? Well, people who snack on almonds have something better to do. Almonds are heart healthy and full of energy, with the crunch that keeps you in the game. California almonds. Crunch on.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Greeny. Thank you for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. What we have for you today, Deflategate, or as we called it, hashtag shrinkage. What does it do to the Patriots' legacy? Great perspective from former NFL referee Gerry plus Ron Jaworski, and a special edition of Love It or Shove It with our Tim Legler.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
And can you believe this is happening again as we bear down now, counting down the days to Super Bowl 49 and one of the most appealing and interesting Super Bowl matchups we could possibly have had, with a one seed and a one seed, and historical significance on one side with an all-time great defense and historical significance on the other side with an all-time great quarterback. And all of a sudden we find ourselves being thrust back into 2007 in the middle of another Patriots cheating scandal. I cannot believe where we wake up this morning, Mike, 12 days from the Super Bowl.
I'm stunned. Obviously, when we talked about this after the game, when the report came out there by Bob Kravitz, I believe that's the first place I had read it. You kind of, okay, whatever. Really, is it a couple, a ball or two? Really, did it? And if it did, what did it do? Certainly didn't. I think the reason it was kind of pushed aside a bit, because it was 45-7. As you said, I think that day they could have used tennis balls, and it would have been a destruction that day. So none of that, nobody believes, had anything to do. Even so, some of the Colts are having some fun with it, saying, hey, we get to play the game over, correct? And obviously that's not going to happen, and the Patriots were the better team. But boy, oh boy, this team getting caught in this situation.
Yeah, well, here's a couple of different interesting things. We live in a sports bubble, right? We live in the cocoon. And when I was on that little soundbite you heard in there of me talking about ain't cheating, ain't trying, that was when I was on CBS yesterday. And what I saw with great interest was they led their show with that yesterday. Tuesday, they led with the deflated ball scandal. Yeah. We barely touched on that Monday. And I think that just to show you that in the sports world, there wasn't a whole lot of surprise about this. In the real world, that's the reaction they're having. And I was really surprised, and I was talking to some of the production people, the producers, and to Charlie Rose about it, that this is what Charlie Rose was fascinated by this. So in the real world, people are fascinated by this. They associate this cheating with the Patriots. And that can't be good. Now, I'll go back to what I said Monday. And you just said it, and I'll say it to if this game was 45-44, I would be a whole lot more interested in how much air was in the footballs. If the game was 8-7, I'd be a whole lot more interested in how much air was in the footballs. It was 45-7. So you have two separate parts of this. Did it have anything to do with the outcome of the game? Certainly did not decide the winner. Yeah. It might have impacted the game slightly. But it certainly didn't decide the winner.
Completely agree.
But if they are playing fast and loose with the rules, if they are cutting corners, Michael Rosenberg writes, if they are cutting corners in such a manner that their home field should be shaped like an oval, then what it does do is it has an impact on their legacy, because that's what they're in this now, right? They're in to try and win every year. But Bill Belichick, if this didn't exist, you could be making a serious argument that if Bill Belichick wins this game a week from Sunday, he's the greatest coach of all time.
And I had said this. I heard Keyshawn say it on Countdown with the fellas, that Spygate still, and this isn't a kind of revelation, Spygate follows them. And until they would win another Super Bowl, and this could have been that Super Bowl, even though after Spygate they've been to two more. They made it to just about the top of the mountain, or at least the top of the mountain in their conference, lost in the Super Bowl, but they still were like, they haven't won one since they cheated. So obviously they cheated for all their championships. That's a conclusion people draw. And I think that's wrong, but it's a conclusion that they draw, but they can fairly draw some of it because they did get caught and they got fined $500,000 for Spygate.
And Dr. Draft Pick.
Yeah, so this was win a Super Bowl, and a lot of that is put to the side. This comes up. I mean, listen, are they the first or last team to let's use the term cut corners? Absolutely not. But they are certainly ones getting caught.
Well, that's it. So let's start by setting this up for those of you who don't know what it is, why there is new news on this morning. Okay, let's start with that. The National Football League, according to our Chris Mortensen, has found that all but one of the Patriots' game balls were inflated significantly less than the NFL requires for their game Sunday in the AFC Championship against Indianapolis. A quote from Patriots spokesman Stacey James: "We have been in complete cooperation with the league and will continue to do so." The Patriots beat the Colts 45-7. It is yet to be determined what, if any, penalties may be imposed upon the Patriots. One source described the league as, quote, "disappointed, angry, and distraught," after spending considerable time on the findings earlier Tuesday. Greg Aiello, the league's senior VP of communications, declined to comment. Here's what the situation. Here's the deal with the balls.
I'll give you a quick overview first. So Colts Patriots get sent 12 balls.
Each.
Okay, each have 12 balls. Use them during the week. Do what manipulate them how you're going to do them. Work them how quarterback likes to have it, and that deal. Then they're turned back in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Then before the game, the referees inspect the footballs. They inspect them. That's the last time they're looked at, touched. After that, they're put away until the game starts. So that's kind of the process. Do what you need to do with them during the week. Get them ready for how you like them for each team. 12 footballs. And then they're inspected by the referee and put away. Kicking balls are different. Kicking balls have a little K on. They're called K balls, not shockingly, and that denotes that they're used for kicking. So these balls are separate, and they're worked on more for the quarterback on how he likes it. You'll hear from Aaron Rodgers when we play how different quarterbacks like the ball to be. But it has to be within a certain specification. We all know PSI. You've all filled up a bike tire, a car tire. You probably haven't filled up either. But for most of you that have, you fill it to whatever PSI. Okay?
Pounds per square inch.
Pounds per square inch. A football is filled between 12.5 and 13.5 PSI.
That's the regulation. That can be filled less or more, but that's the league regulation.
Got to be in that range is where it needs to be, and the ball can't be heavier than 14 to 15 ounces. So that's the process, at least how it goes until the game starts.
And that's not how it seems to have gone for the AFC Championship game. Chris Mortensen.
One of the sources I spoke with described the league as being variations of emotions from disappointed, angry, distraught, and they spent considerable time on these initial findings today.
So now, one of the things that we've been cautioned to do this morning is not to say the Patriots deflated the balls, but that the balls were found to be underinflated.
Right.
Is it possible that 11 of 12 balls were underinflated by accident or on their own, or as Buster only sends me a note, are the Patriots running a simultaneous investigation to figure out who didn't deflate the 12th ball? Those are the questions that are out there. So listen, let's start with this, okay? Here's the most important question. On a scale of 1 to 10, in your opinion as a former NFL player who doesn't have a horse in the race, I know you don't hate the Patriots, and you don't particularly like them. You really don't care one way or another.
Not care.
You're watching this as an impartial observer and one who played the game for 9 years at the highest level.
Right.
In your opinion, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big a deal is this?
Well, I don't think it's a huge deal. Clearly, if you do it, it can give the quarterback an advantage to be able to grip the ball. So
I guess what I'm saying is, if you lost a really big game in your career, you lost some playoff games. You mentioned the Fog Bowl. Obviously, the Fog Bowl was the Fog Bowl.
Yeah.
You lost a game, the last game of your career. You were in Miami, and you lost in overtime. If you found out later that you lost a game that might have kept you from going to the Super Bowl, to this day, all right, we're about to go cover our 16th Super Bowl together. You will not set foot in the building. For those who don't know, and we've told this story before, Mike Golick leaves town before the Super Bowl is played every single year, watches it on TV, and will not set foot in the building unless, God willing, someday one of his sons gets a chance to play in it, or I guess someday one of your grandsons gets a chance to play in it. But outside of that, because it eats at you that you never got to the big game, you don't want to go, which I admire about you about as much as anything. If you found out that this happened in a game that kept you out of the Super Bowl, would you feel as though you were cheated out of your chance?
Well, in a word, I'll start by saying no. I probably would not. Now, I guess as we've talked about, if it's 45-7, you don't have a whole lot of leg to stand on because I don't think it's going to make that much different. But I guess you could say in a close game, I could see where you would be a little miffed at it. That's one of the big reasons why, as you mentioned, we didn't jump into a lot of this. It was 45-7. As we said, they could have thrown tennis balls out there. But if it was a close game, I could see I would be a player that would think about it. Okay, in a close game, you're really talking about, as we always do, a few plays. Look at the Green Bay-Seattle game, a few plays, and could they get an advantage on those if the quarterback gets a better grip? Yeah, you could say that. But because it was 45-7, it doesn't compute in my head that it really made a whole lot of difference at all.
We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Caller, click today, find out if you could save. More Chris Mortensen.
2 hours before the game, the referee, in this case Walt Anderson, would inspect and approve each of those footballs, and they would be handed over to the team and not to be altered during the game. So, under protocol, Walt Anderson, the referee, would have to have inspected and approved those footballs, and then they are not to be altered once they go to the team's side. And we know that they did, in fact, remove some footballs because they were a little bit deflated during the game.
So here's the other side if you want to talk about. Were they inspected? When they were inspected, were they tested? Were they all checked? That's a process, I don't know. Again, inspected, so this is where the balls are supposed to be. Is the PSI checked in every – I can't believe we're talking about this. Is the PSI checked in every football before the game? In the inspection. What's the inspection? Looking at it, making sure it's not defaced in any way? Or is it actually sticking a pin in there, checking the PSI, and or weighing it, making sure it's between 14 and 15 ounces? I don't know the answer to that. So after they were inspected – were they already below, and were they not measured PSI-wise, or were they and then put into the game, and then they were deflated somehow after that? Because let's be honest. Let's be completely honest. 11 of the 12 balls, I mean, come on.
Well, I don't know where you're going.
11 of the 12 balls means it doesn't sound like something that can happen on its own.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. 11,
if it was 2 balls out of the 12, Is there a plus or minus? I guess with everything, 11 of the 12.
I'll tell you, I have a couple of different thoughts. The first one is, I have to confess, I covered the National Football League for 7 years, and obviously I have followed the National Football League all of my life. And this time has been the first time that I ever really found out this protocol with the footballs. Each team supplies their own and all that sort of stuff. You want to talk about a situation that is rife for this kind of problem. And they don't do that in any other sport. Now, I remember years ago, there was the whole controversy, guys, about were the Colorado Rockies keeping balls in a humidor? Remember when balls were flying out of Colorado like crazy, and were they keeping some baseballs in a humidor to get them more moist so they wouldn't travel as far, and thus they'd be pitching those? In baseball, obviously, the umpires hold the balls and keep throwing out new ones all the time. And you go through, I don't even know how many balls you would go through in an average game. In tennis, for example, which is a sport that I know just from playing it, like when you play at the minor level, I never got past this. Each player is responsible for bringing 1 can of new balls, and you open them up while you're there. Anyone who's ever played tennis knows the sound of a tennis can opening, the smell of the new, and then you just play with them. But even in matches, like they change balls at a certain point in the match, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's all. Why you allow the teams to supply their own balls? You're just begging for. In basketball, they don't. Michael Jordan didn't show up and say, "Here, I brought my ball. We're going to play with this one."
But there have been instances, and we have legs in today, and I heard people talking about it for basketball. For if you're playing a team that's a great shooting team, that you inflate the ball a little more, make it a little more, so it's going to claim.
Who does that?
I don't know who does that. The home team. I've heard that talked about. So that's something we.
I guess that's maybe my question is: does the home team get to handle the equipment before the game starts, or is that all done by some league official?
In football, again, this is all for the feel of the quarterback and about getting it how they like to have it. Because a new football, if you just open up a new football and throw it out on the field, there's a bit of a sheen to it.
Yes, it's slippery.
So you work that off. A lot of things. As I said, Jeff Fiegels played was the punter in Philadelphia when I was there, and then went on, obviously punted before that. Other teams, the Giants as well. But he would take the footballs into the sauna and work them in there. Get them warm in there, work off that sheen, and work the ball to how quarterbacks and they all wanted it. That was commonplace, and that's what goes on. You get the footballs, you get to use them, work them, and get them how you want to get them. So they're basically, I guess the word to use is broken in. Kind of like how you break in your mitt, as a kid, or you do it for your kid. You break them in, so you're not just grabbing a brand new football with the little sheen on it and trying to throw it, given the weather as well. So this has been going on for a long time as far as being able to kind of do things with the football.
The person who apparently has led this was Manning. Is it Eli Manning or Peyton Manning?
I think it was Peyton.
Peyton Manning? Because I have a story here about Eli Manning. So Sethi sent me a story that was written in November of 2013 by Bill Pennington, the New York Times. And it goes into, obviously, well before anyone knew this was going to become a huge topic of conversation leading up to the Super Bowl, a huge story about how Eli Manning handles his footballs, before a game.
Right.
Let me also say that I'm an extraordinarily immature man.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have this scandal,
Oh, I know.
the language that is involved in this,
Yeah.
I'm not mature enough to handle it without giggling.
I've been listening to Morse cuts, and I just giggle.
I just can't do this.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
I'm trying as hard as I can to run as professional a broadcast here as I possibly can this morning. I did 20 radio interviews yesterday promoting my book, and every place I'm on, everyone's asking me about the deflated balls, and I got to tell you, I can't do that. I can't have that conversation with you without giggling because there's still a 12-year-old boy in me.
It's always going to be there.
And I just can't get him out of there. But one way or another, in 1 minute, you will hear what it is that Eli Manning does to his footballs to get ready to play.
Always have to say foot. I'm with you. Listen, I'm with you.
They're the balls. I mean, that's what we're talking
Every time
about.
I'm hearing somebody talk about it, I beg they say footballs. I beg it.
You know how football players always use the word football? He's a good football player. He's a great football player. Good football team. Mike Ditka is the king of that.
Yeah.
Right? He is a good football player. They're a good football team. They won the football game. Now I know why.
Yeah.
Because if you don't insert the foot before the balls, it's kind of hard to do it with a straight face.
It's a whole different conversation.
Timmy Legs in studio, his Subway Fresh Take for an hour today, taking your basketball questions. Ron Jaworski.
Well, I mean, has he ever deflated his footballs?
Ron Jaworski, who knows the importance of the feel, of the football. Again, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Jaws later this morning, John Gruden, all on the Subway Fresh Day column.
Only 3 hours and 40 minutes to go.
Listen, but am I the only one?
No, you're
I'm
not
supposed
the only
to be a
one.
grown-up.
No.
I am supposed to be an adult.
We don't want to be an adult. You
I can't help it.
You got to keep a little bit of kid in you, and this is the part of the kid that comes out right now.
All right, so anyway, this story going back to November of 2013 in the New York Times. It says here, when Eli Manning drops back to throw his first pass Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys, the football in his hands will be as familiar as an old friend. That is because the ball has been scoured, scrubbed, soaked, and seasoned, a breaking-in process that takes months and ensures that every ball used by the Giants in a game will meet Manning's exact preferences. The leather will have been softened, the grip enhanced, and the overall feel painstakingly assessed. There are no new balls thrown around in an NFL game. And it goes on to get into all the things we're talking about here. For every NFL game, each team has 12 to 20 balls that it has meticulously groomed and prepared according to the needs of its starting quarterback. The balls, brushed and primed using various and obvious and semi-secret techniques, bear the team logo and are switched out from sideline to sideline depending on which team is on offense. That means that from series to series, the ball in play can feel wholly different, but each team's quarterback always has a ball prepped by his equipment staff the way he likes it. So this is nothing new. It's something that no one has really had any occasion to pay attention to. I think if I had come across that story in the New York Times a year and a half ago, I don't know that I would have been inclined to read it. I would have said, what the heck do I care how these quarterbacks are scrubbing up the balls before they go out and play? But now all of a sudden becomes extraordinarily significant. And again, to make it clear, on a wet day, where you just by nature, your grip is going to be a little bit less sure.
A wet day.
The ball's a little softer. Right. It's going to be easier.
Any situation where you may have a tough grip, a really cold day, sometimes the ball can feel slick, as well. So any situation where you have a tough grip on the ball, being able to hold more leather, as they say, or grip it a little better, is going to help the quarterback.
So, Mort, what might happen here?
This is what I would call probably the early findings. But in this case, there can be sanctions, there can be fines. Some people will suggest you can take away draft picks, but that's jumping a little bit of ahead because we still don't know if they've discovered who altered the footballs, if they were altered, and by the way, I might add, if they were properly inspected before the game. So there's still some things I think we need to find out before we jump to the final conclusions on it.
I mean, I agree with that. That is going to be a question, and that's part of it. I knew about the footballs. Listen, because playing, I know that the teams get. I know you say you just found that out, but I know teams get their own footballs. They're allowed to manipulate them and work on them. But I don't know. I knew they had to be given in. I don't know, and maybe we can try and email the league or just find out for them when the referee and looks at the footballs. Are they checked? I mean, are they checked for PSI? Are they checked for weight? That I have no idea about. Or is there an assumption that the home team has got them in the right area that they need to be? That I don't know. That I don't know as well. So if there is a process where when they're inspected, they're supposed to be checked for PSI and weight, that's an area you have to look at. And if not, then you look at the team and what they did. And again, if it gets to that, 11 of the 12 balls were basically 2 pounds of PSI underweight. 11 of the 12. So if we don't hear from the officiating crew or the official that maybe there wasn't the proper protocol for inspection, I got to believe that the Patriots are going to get smacked down for this.
Here's the one thing that doesn't make much sense to me in all of this, okay, before we get on to any other questions.
Yeah.
Okay? If you watch a football, I mean, you don't have to watch a football game. How many people handle that football during the course of a game that are not wearing New England Patriots uniforms, i.e., how many times do the officials touch the ball?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So a running back goes down. They're running that hurry-up offense, right? The Patriots
handle it every
hurry
play.
up. They handle the ball to an official after every single play.
Right.
A guy wearing stripes, not wearing Patriots. And listen, I'm the last person in the world I want to sit here defending the Patriots. They are my sworn enemy.
Yeah.
But a guy wearing stripes is handling the football after every single play. So that would be an awfully brazen thing to do and make the assumption that if it is even remotely noticeable indifference, how would the officials not notice
know?
it? They're handling the ball after every play.
There are questions again I don't understand about PSI. There's that. There's where the ball's tested inside and when they came outside in the weather. Did that have an effect? Did they test the footballs of the Colts? Were they all where they needed to be? Again, in the testing process, is PSI actually looked at, or did the ball just feel deflated? There are a lot of questions. There actually are, and it's amazing we're talking about this, but because it's the Patriots and what they've gotten busted for in the past, and because it's them now, that's why it gets talked about. But this is where we are. This is where we are. This is an email from David. Now, he does say, I don't actually believe this happened, but one could take a lesson from NASCAR. These illegal deflation passing routine inspection occurs when micro holes are punctured in the tire. The tires hold pressure long enough to pass inspection, but slowly lose pressure. Perhaps the same technique could be used. Inflate the footballs with micro holes. Pass inspection as they slowly deflate until equilibrium is established. Oh, my God.
Well, but that's not impossible. I know. I mean, NASCAR is a good example of this. Because NASCAR, right, the cars, and I'm the farthest thing from an expert, but I know that each of the cars has to pass a certain level of inspection because there are differences in all of them according to the specifications. They're all different brands. Many of them are different makes of cars. Each of the drivers obviously likes things his or her own way set up in there. But they have to pass an inspection. There are certain uniform rules they have to be within. And we see it all the time.
All the time.
That you have problems with those. They're docked points and all that kind of stuff. So this is somewhat similar to that. So I threw the question, because here's the only thing that matters. Okay? They're not replaying the game. They're not undoing this, and the Colts are going to play Seattle in the Super Bowl. That's not on the list of options.
No.
So all that is at stake is the Patriots' reputation. That's what's at stake here. Now, you might argue their reputation was already something that a lot of people questioned. Is this just a sort of another nail in that coffin or whatever it is? So I threw the question up on Twitter at ESPN Greeny, and I'd love to see what your perspective on it is. And the question very simply is as follows. Does this issue with the deflated balls impact the Patriots' legacy? And I put hashtag Mike and Mike. And then we all put our heads together and thought, what hashtag should we use to cover this story to make it our own? And we decided there was really only one when you really think about it. So our hashtag we're using is shrinkage. That's the hashtag we're using.
Shrinkage.
Hashtag shrinkage. Does this impact the Patriots' legacy? That, to me, is the big picture question. Buster also sends another note saying, wouldn't this inevitably lead to the NFL standardizing the football preparation for game and hiring folks not connected with either team to handle the footballs before and during the games? Here's another thing I've never fully understood. Okay? You watch a game, and you will see sometimes the scorekeeper, the clock keeper, the timekeeper, right? If it is advantageous to the home team, when a timeout is called or when a play ends or when a whistle blows, that clock stops like this, right? Like this. And sometimes when the road team is trying to get a timeout, a couple of seconds tick off. And you can't help but think to yourself, well, there's a home team. Why is someone from the home team keeping the clock in an NFL game?
Does seem odd.
They don't have one guy they can hire. This is a business that makes trillions of dollars. They can't hire someone whose job it is. And those things should all be uniformly handled.
It does seem odd. And it's an interesting question by Buster. Do we go to this now? Because the home team provides the boys girls, men, whoever are handling the footballs on the sideline that are throwing it into the refs. But a lot of this, I go back to your point. The officials are handling the footballs every single play.
Right?
You're
spot the ball.
You're
the player doesn't
absolutely right.
Spot the ball.
You're absolutely right. Now, are they taking it and squeezing it and feeling it? No, but you think through.
If it was a significant difference, you'd think you'd notice.
You would think you would notice. So,
for what it's worth, yesterday I was on CBS this morning. Thanks everyone there for having me. And they had 2 balls. Charlie Rose gave me 2 balls. I can't say these things without laughing.
Say footballs.
But he said to me, "Can you feel the difference?" And I squeezed them and all that kind of stuff. And you could feel a slight difference.
Right.
And he said one of them was inflated to 13. One of them was inflated to 9. So that was way, way, way different. Right?
Again,
a bigger difference.
The range is 12.5 to 13.5 PSI. That's what a football has to be.
So the second one was way less than what it's supposed to be. I would say I could tell a difference, but if I didn't know I was looking for a difference,
right,
and I would not have noticed. So you're talking about the most minuscule difference imaginable. Doesn't mean it isn't creating an event. When you're talking about the creme de la creme, the elite of the greatest players in the world at this sport, these legendary quarterbacks, the Bradys, the Rodgers, whatever it is, and I guess the feel they have for a ball like a pitcher in baseball, it does make a difference.
Listen, in a sprint, do you try not to get every piece of clothing you wear to win by 1/100th of a second?
Sure.
I mean, less than a snap of a finger. So the smallest of things can make the biggest of deals. Now it's just a matter of, did they know? Was it weather related? As I said, were the Colts footballs checked as well? These are the questions that need to be answered. But your question's a fair question because it's been going on since Spygate. You know, is the legacy tarnished? I happen to think Bill Belichick is an unbelievably great coach. I think that preparation is fantastic. I think they are a great organization. Do organizations cut corners and sometimes get caught? Yes. They're not the first or the last that do that, but they have now, that we know the one they got busted, and would this be another one? I can't stand the fact that, and I read it, and Michael Rosenberg from SI.com did it, and others do as well, to include the formation against the Baltimore Ravens in their list of things that the Patriots do wrong.
The ineligible, eligible receiver.
That's where you start to lose me. Stick to things that are relevant. That's not relevant. That was completely legal what they did. I'm sorry. His explanation to me was completely wrong about it. Whether you talk to the league during the week that you may try some things, or before a game, which is what a lot of coaches do, talking about a thing. And then the fact you did it, you did everything you were supposed to do. And then because you snapped it as quick as you possibly could to take advantage of it. If you snapped it too quick, whose fault is that? It's the officials for not stopping it. If the officials didn't know something there, then it's on them. But I don't. If the ball was ready to be snapped and they snapped it, it's not on them. So that's the one thing where it goes too far. You start to look at too many things of the Patriots. That's ingenuity. That's smart football to do that. Don't put that in with Spygate or if they're guilty of the deflated balls. But that's what starts to happen. Is you start to throw every little thing in that isn't relevant. So I just wanted to get, because I'm starting to see too much of that. Oh, yeah, and that illegal formation they did against the Ravens. It wasn't illegal. Everything they did was perfectly legal. Learn how to defend it.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Longtime NFL official Gerry Austin, who joins us here on Mike and Mike on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Gerry, good morning. And let's start with that. Is it standard operating procedure in the National Football League before every game or any game or a game of this magnitude for the official who is inspecting the footballs to actually weigh every one of them and to actually get the pounds per square inch that they are inflated of every single one of the balls?
Well, they don't actually weigh the footballs, but what they do with the footballs is they do check the pounds per square inch, and it must be between 12.5 and 13.5 pounds per square inch, and that is done every game, whether it's a preseason game, playoff game, or the Super Bowl. The teams bring 12 balls to the officials' locker room before 2 hours before the game, and the balls are marked. Each referee has his own indicator to show that this ball has been inspected, and they check the air pressure. And if the air pressure is low, they bring it up to around 13 pounds. And if it's too much, then they deflate it to that point.
So I guess I would just ask you then if Walt Anderson did that before this game and all the balls passed inspection, and then when the as they said, the Patriots footballs after that, when they were tested, 11 of the 12 were found to be about 2 pounds PSI under, what would you take away from that?
Well, my understanding is all 12 balls were under the 13 pounds, but 11 of them were more than 2 pounds under the 13 pounds. And I take away from that, somebody's let some air out of the balls. Now, do I have knowledge of whether they did or not? Because both teams' balls were brought in at halftime, to my understanding, and all 24 balls were checked. And the Colts balls were still up to 13 pounds, and the Patriots balls were not.
Mike and Gerry Austin, longtime NFL official. Is that a circumstance you ever encountered during your long career officiating NFL games?
I never did encounter that, but we never did check. I don't recall ever having checked the balls again after we sent them out. Now, the balls stay with the officials until they leave the locker room the last time, approximately 10 minutes before kickoff. And when they carry the bag of balls for both teams, and they give them to the ball boys. The ball boys then have the balls. That is, except for the 12 kicking balls. The kicking balls are handled by a special assigned official to each game, so no one touches the kicking ball except for that official. So the 24 balls are carried out of the locker room 10 minutes before kickoff and given to the ball boys.
Former NFL official Gerry Austin joining us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. We also brought up this. So if the balls, they were checked at halftime, if, as you say, and they were underinflated, that means in the first half, if they were underinflated, we've talked about the officials handle the footballs on every single play. Should the referees have noticed that they were underinflated at that point? Does that come into play at all since they handle it on every play?
I don't think you don't even give that a thought. The ball is tossed to the umpire. He puts it on the ground, and all you're trying to do is get the process of the play to stay within the sequence of what they want to keep the play moving. So when the ball comes in from the sideline, it's tossed to the umpire. He puts it on the ground, and then he backs out, or he holds the center until the substitutions are complete, and then he backs out. So the amount of time that you're handling the ball is very limited.
And then, Gerry, I guess the question becomes, and clearly you've been in contact with someone because you have an understanding of this that we hadn't previously heard. If the balls were checked at halftime and found to be underinflated, would they then have been pumped up to meet regulation at that point, meaning in the second half they would have played with balls that would have met the regulations?
That is, to my understanding, that's what would have occurred, that they would have brought the balls back up to the standard.
But you don't know for sure one way or another if they did do that.
I don't know that for a fact, but it would really surprise me if that did not happen. If they brought them in to check them and they're underinflated, then they're going to inflate them to get them back up to standard.
All right, that's excellent insight. Wow. Gerry, we really appreciate it. Thanks you very much. Very much. Thanks, Gerry.
Thanks, guys.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Timmy Legs is here. Tim Legler, we'll talk some basketball with him. All NBA edition of Love It or Shove It. Mike and Mike, here's Subway Fresh Take. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Good to have everybody back. Good to be back. Thanks, Adnan, for filling in yesterday. You did a great job. Mm-hmm. I actually listened to the entire first hour of the show yesterday as I was on my way into the city to do media and stuff like that for the book, and I thought you guys sounded really good.
Yeah, he does a good job. Listen, he's done this a lot, much like a Schlereth would sit in for me a lot. Adnan sits in a bunch for you, and it's good talk. A little more movie talk when he's on. That dude could be, I mean,
a critic.
He's unbelievable.
I didn't. The part of the show I heard, I didn't hear any of that.
Incredible, but it was a lot of fun.
The one thing that I think is worthy of note is I was on CBS this morning, and that's a news show. So they're covering the news of the day. And we frequently, and not frequently, we always have, but I will frequently take a look out of the corner of my eye to see CBS This Morning, Good Morning America, Today Show, right? The big national news shows where they're covering whatever is going on in the world. Whenever there's a sports story out there of note, I'll just look over to see how much attention they're paying to it, Legs, because, we live in this sports bubble where we think everything that happens in sports is the most important thing in the world. I'd like to see how much interest the world has in it. Yesterday, and not because I was there, that was the number 2 story on CBS This Morning was Deflategate. So this obviously is something that has gone well outside of just the parameters of the sports world. Maybe it's because this is the build-up to the Super Bowl, and you have 2 weeks to analyze any little thing. But I'll ask you, Lex, just as a former professional athlete, a follower of pro football, as I know you to be, and a fan of the sport, how big a deal is this to you?
Personally, for me, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Now, if I had a group of NFL quarterbacks get interviewed and say, "Are you kidding me?" It means everything. Now, I would say, and then it would change my mind, but I would say also, a 45-7 game, you're saying, was it that big of a deal? Would it have mattered in the outcome of the game? And I think if you start to think that, if this is a 3-point game and then this comes out, then maybe you think it's a bigger deal. But the fact that it was clear that the Patriots were a significantly better team on that particular day, that's why I think, for me, it's diminished a little bit. And I haven't heard just an outrage from NFL players. There's been a little bit, but not an outrage saying absolutely it altered the game, and that's something that they did to get an advantage that other teams don't do.
I think that's why we moved past it even a little quicker, is because of the game was 45-7. We don't think it had any bearing on the game. Now, if they're caught here and the league finds them guilty of cheating, they'll pay a certain price for it. And quite honestly, forgetting what it'll cost them more in the legacy issue, because now you have that on top of Spygate, something they already were found guilty of. So I think that's the worst part about it. But yeah, there hasn't been. We all follow Twitter outside of the Colts, couple of Colts players. Oh, do we get to play the game over now? And yeah, they're goofing around. You hear a couple of the Ravens players start saying, yeah, that's it. The balls were deflated. You haven't heard in Twitter world an outrage from the players. Is it illegal to do if they get busted? Yeah, it's illegal to do. If the game was 21-20. We may be having a different conversation. But we moved past it because New England was clearly just that much better of a team.
Pat McAfee, the punter for the Colts, tweeted, "If New England was to be DQ'd, we'd be their replacements, right? I should probably lay off these strawberry margaritas."
I saw that last night. That was great.
That's pretty funny.
That is good.
Let's see here. Jeremy writes to us, "I initially thought this Deflategate business was ridiculous and not a big deal. But hearing the latest news is disturbing. Even though the rule seems minor, the fact that the Patriots would potentially make the effort to alter the balls and do it without getting caught just makes me wonder what else they are doing."
I think that's what a lot of people go to is, okay, Bill Belichick is a great coach. He has coached great teams there, and the way they game plan and what you think they're going to do one thing and they do another, it's been great. So everybody says, well, then why do you need to do that? Why do you need to tape, a team's practice for Spygate? Why do you need, if again, we don't want to assume, but if we find out they're guilty, why do you need to deflate the ball? I can't answer that. I'm not in that situation. But to me, I do think he's a great coach, and I do think they've been a great team and a great organization for years.
I agree with that point 100%. It definitely makes you question what else they might be doing, and you constantly ask yourself why. Why do they need to do that? Obviously, they want to win, but would he have needed to do that to win? But as far as the actual impact on that particular game, and I'm not an NFL player, I'm not a football player, but to me, it doesn't seem like it would be enough to say, hey, it really tilted things in the Patriots' favor.
Even there's not one Indianapolis Colt who could honestly, I think, look in the mirror and say that either. That to say they just weren't the better team and they took it to us. LeGarrette Blount, the way he ran, what effect did it have running? People say, well, they could grip the ball better running. Okay, I think we're it's getting a little crazy there. So, yeah, I don't think there's one Colt. Forgetting the fact that you're a sports guy, sports you played, but I don't think any players who played in that game on the Colts could legitimately say, you know what, the outcome could have been different if, in fact, they were guilty of this. I don't think there's one player that could realistically say that.
Paulie Two Toes tweets us, baseball pitchers try to gain every possible advantage by roughing up the baseball to get a better grip. Is that cheating? Dennis, Jimmy Johnson has won 6 championships. His team has been caught cheating numerous times. Nobody says a word. J. Edward Bell, throwing a deflated ball would be like throwing a Nerf ball, easier to throw and catch. Glenn Rushworth, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And everyone is using the hashtag shrinkage. Again, that's our hashtag for this. Please use the hashtag shrinkage. We have shrinkage right now is the number 3 trending topic in the U.S.
The part that, Legs, when you and I talk about you get away with what you can get away with to make the official call, you start to get the response, and that's just what grates me. People comparing it, so you guys think it's okay to steal money out of a Starbucks tip jar if someone's not looking. It's one of the most ridiculous comparisons I've ever heard in my life.
That's called a crime.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Another saying, what I get from this conversation is sportsmanship should be removed from the English language. And I emailed back to this person, listen, so you're telling me that if you were in the NFL and you trapped the ball, you would tell the official, you know what, I didn't catch that if he said it's a catch. If you were in the NBA and the ball went off of you, but they gave it to your team, you would tell the official that it went off of you. There's not a chance you would do that.
No, but that doesn't mean that you would illegally deflate the balls before the game starts.
No. This is the conversation about Legs and I saying that's different. I'm separating that.
Right.
I'm talking about in a refereed sport getting away with what you can get away with. A lot of people are having an issue with that. And listen, I'm not saying I did that with my 10-year-old kids on the football field to the extent that we did that in the NFL or you in the NBA. If you're up at that level, my friends, you're going to get away with everything you can get away with that the ref isn't going to call.
When you start talking about cheating, I think to me you really need to focus on what could be easily detected within the confines of that game by the officiating crew. And to me, that seems like something that the officials, if it was that blatant, should have been able to pick up on. Even though a player is going to know probably more, the official should have an idea when they're handling that football if they're underinflated. So if it's something that should be easily detected within the confines of the game by the officiating crew, that's different than Spygate, where they're trying to do something that they hope to God no one is seeing and that will never be detected if they get away with it. That to me is a lot different.
The best of Mike and Mike. It's time for another edition of Love It.
Oh, this is fun.
Or Shove It with Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio.
All right, Tim Legler is nice enough to spend an entire hour in our studio, and what do? We bring him Bubba. Our board operator, Bubba, Brendan Peregrine, will have a variety of NBA topics. He will present them to Legs, and Legs will decide if he loves them or shoves them. Brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. Tired of overpriced razors? Join DollarShaveClub.com. Get amazing razors delivered for a few bucks a month. Good morning, Bubba.
Hello.
What do you make of this whole deflated balls thing, Bobs?
Well, the Cowboys didn't do it, so. Cowboys don't have to cheat to win.
All right, Bubba is with us. Let's go. What is your first headline for Timmy Legs?
All right, first up, the current top seeds, Hawks and Warriors, will meet in the NBA Finals. Love it or shove it?
Legs.
I'm going to say shove it. And not because I don't think that could happen, but if I love it, I'm saying that's who I think will be in the finals. It's far too early for that, particularly with some of the moves that were made by the Western Conference teams. When it's all said and done, Memphis might be the best team in the West. I think the addition of Jeff Green could be the one ingredient that they were lacking. They might be, but you have to give them a few weeks to let it play out. Rondo going to Dallas. It's going to take time. Houston made some additions. And in the East, I love Atlanta right now if you're talking about Washington and Toronto, but I think Cleveland and Chicago have a lot more growth that could take place in the second half of the year, where I think one of those teams could get in. Ultimately, that would be Chicago I'd lean toward now.
Let me tweak it then. One of these teams is going to make the finals. Which one?
Atlanta. I would say Atlanta before Golden State. I think there's teams out west that made some significant moves, and they're recent moves. And over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks, I think that's going to play itself out. You can't take away what Golden State has done. They clearly have been the best team in the NBA to this point, and certainly in the West. But I think that could change. There are some teams now that made themselves a position, I think, to make a run for it.
And the West is just so much better and deeper in general. Anyway, Bubba, next topic, go.
Steph Curry is the NBA MVP. Love it or shove it?
Love that one. I think Steph Curry has been the best player on the best team. And we talk always about his shooting. And that does they feed off of that and makes them go. But this guy's a phenomenal playmaker. And he, moving the basketball the way that he does, he's ambidextrous with his passing. He can handle the basketball as well as anybody in this league. And he moves the basketball to the next guy. And that's why the culture of the way the Warriors play is so fun to watch. Everybody touches it. It starts with Steph Curry. He's their best player, but he's not a selfish player. He doesn't force a lot. And, to me, this guy's been unbelievable from start to finish this year. I think James Harden is making a serious push for it now.
That's the name I was going to bring up. Harden right now is leading the league in scoring, is just under year, 7 assists per game. He's making
the defensive numbers are outstanding. That it's interesting because I was watching a conversation with some of it was Broussard and I forget who else was having it, but it's interesting we're having a discussion about MVP, and the names that don't come up at all are LeBron James and Kevin Durant. And they're not even in the discussion, right? And rightly so. Doesn't mean they're not great players, but for differing reasons, they're not even in the conversation.
There was one point this year, month into the season, when I had to list my top 10 after the first month, and I didn't even have LeBron in the top 10 for the reason being they were under 500 at the time, and no MVP is going to win. It's not baseball. It's not like A-Rod on a last-place team wins the MVP. In basketball, your team has to be above 500 and typically have to be a team toward the top of your conference, and they weren't at the time. So I said, how can he be in the top 10? You know, LeBron, when it's all said and done, is going to be in this discussion. Durant's going to be in this discussion. Westbrook will probably be in this discussion if Oklahoma City gets hot. But right now, for me, the top two guys are Curry and Harden.
And is that a reason Anthony Davis isn't in the discussion?
That's the reason. As great as his numbers are, and you could say, hey, right now, he might be the third player you pick. Some people might even pick him higher than that. Durant, LeBron, then him. But the bottom line is until your team is over 500 and a legitimate threat to go deep into the playoffs, you're not going to be considered for the MVP in this league.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Tim Legler in our studio with his Subway Fresh take, loving it or shoving it. Bubba next.
All right, we talked about this yesterday. Derrick Rose was right to air his frustrations through the media. Love it or shove it?
Shove it on that one. And I don't have a problem with, honestly, with his message. I don't have a problem with what he was saying, and I don't have a problem with the fact that he's a star of the team and the face of the franchise. I just think you're better off having those conversations first in the locker room and with the coaching staff, because it seemed like that caught a lot of people off guard. And if he was airing this out already to the coaches and players, and these conversations were taking place behind closed doors, and then he finally did it to the media. But it seems like this is the first place it came out of Derrick Rose, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I will say this: I think too much of a big deal has been made about it because what he really said was mild. I wanted him to be more specific in what the issue was with this team right now, in his opinion. And I thought he was pretty vague in general. That does lead to whispering in the locker room a little bit, like, is he talking about you? Is he talking about me? But I don't have a real problem with the message. I just don't think you go to the media first with that.
So then what is it? And this is a team that was top 5 defensively, and then when the new year came out, really after January 5th, that was their last win in a 13-2 run. It was over Houston. They had been 2-6 up with that last loss to Cleveland. Now they're bottom 5 defensive efficiency. Can't all be Joakim Noah. I'm sure that's a nice part of it because you love him on the defensive end. He's missed a few games, but what's been a difference for them?
Joakim Noah out for an extended period of time, absolutely. I couldn't overstate it enough what he means to them defensively. You're talking about it just a few games,
right?
So what it is, and this is one opinion I have, and I've seen this happen before in the past. This is the best offensive team that Tom Thibodeau has coached. Right? You have Derrick Rose playing now, and for the most part healthy. You have Jimmy Butler, who's turned into a 20-point scorer, and you added Pau Gasol to your team. Maybe the mentality is, they took their foot off the gas a little bit defensively because they don't need to grind it out every possession and win 85-82. And I think the mentality is a little bit, they're scoring a little bit easier. And what they've done is now they've kind of lost a little bit of the identity of who they were and how they win games. I think they can get that back, and as the urgency gets greater in the second half of the season, I think you're going to see them start to play that kind of defense, and now you'll also have a great offensive team at your disposal. So I think when it's all said and done, Chicago is going to be just fine. Losing 6 out of 8 is never a good thing, but if you're going to do it, now's the time of year to do it.
Mike and Mike, Legs in our studio. Bubba with Love It or Shove It next.
The Phil Jackson era in New York will have a happy ending for the Knicks. Love it or shove it?
I'm going to say shove it, and I know that they're creating a lot of cap space, and they're just dumping everything, right? And trying to get as bad as they possibly can and have as much flexibility as they possibly can. My question, the reason I say shove it, how long does Phil Jackson want to do this? That's really the question. How long is he going to really want to stay in there and grind it out, trying to get this team back to respectability? And you have Carmelo Anthony there now that you've committed to. So you have all this cap space. Are there really a lot of big-time free agents that are dying to come there and play with Melo? And that's what you're going to have to get to make this happen. I'm not convinced that Melo and some role player guys around you is enough. He's proven that throughout his career. So you're going to have to add some star talent next to him. Are you going to be able to entice guys to come play with him? Do you think that's a winning formula? And so how long is this going to take? They're 6-36. I mean, they are beyond rock bottom. Is Phil Jackson going to have the wherewithal, right, and the intestinal fortitude to stay with this long enough? And that's why I say shove it, because I doubt it.
What's Phil Jackson's pitch? When he's talking to a big-time free agent, If you're Phil, what are you saying to that guy to try and get him to come to New York?
Well, hopefully you're blinding him with all of your rings as you're sitting there clanking them on the desk while the guy's sitting across me. That's the first thing. This is what I do. Anything less than winning is not acceptable to me. So no matter what it takes, we are going to turn it around. There's no place better to be than to be part of turning this thing around than New York City. You will own this city if you are part of what we do to restore this franchise back to not just respectability, but back to a team that gets to the finals and wins a championship. And I'm committed to the cause. I've done it before. I know what it's going to take. Pretty good sales job right there.
Let me ask you a question that was asked of me. I will ask both of you this, because I did a bunch of book tour interviews yesterday, and someone asked me this question. It seems, I guess I shouldn't say obvious, but there are a lot of people who are of the opinion that Carmelo Anthony is still on the floor because the All-Star game is in New York, because all the All-Star festivities are going to be split up between Brooklyn and then the Sunday night game. The big game is in the Garden, and that's sort of his home, and he'll be like the hometown guy for all of that, and that's a big deal for whoever the superstar is, right? Kind of the home team. And then after that, he will have the surgery that he requires. That he's really only out there for the All-Star game, and then he'll have the surgery. I can't prove that that's what's going to happen, but it's certainly, I think most people's perspective is that's what's going to happen. Do we have a problem with that? Is there something wrong with that or not?
As long as what's going on with his knee, and the doctors will know this, and the question I would ask, how long is the rehab going to take, and am I going to be fine? Because, listen, once he gets the surgery, he's done for the year, right? Mm-hmm. So as long as he can have it after the All-Star game, that's a lot of time to recover for the start of next season, depending on just how much work they have to do on the knee. If this is one of those, we have so much work to do on the knee, we're not sure you'll make it back by the start of next season, then you want to get it done as soon as you can. But if it's not, and he's going to be back, then I don't really have a problem with it.
I don't have a big problem with it. The thing I question is, if that's true, and they know that within the organization, you're really rolling the dice that nothing happens to him between now and the All-Star game. When you're playing completely meaningless games, you've surrounded him with a roster that has no chance of winning on a nightly basis, and all you're really doing is adding miles to him. And when you know that he's going to shut it down eventually, then you have a few weeks to go before the All-Star game. I think you're really rolling the dice.
May I pause in the middle of Love It or Shove It to make the following announcement. The number one trending topic on Twitter in the United States right now is #shrinkage. It is also trending worldwide. It is so right now. #shrinkage is trending world. This might be my proudest moment.
I want to be the first one to congratulate you for being the official spokesperson for shrinkage.
Yeah. Listen, if anyone was born for this duty, it was me.
Literally and figuratively.
The poster child for shrinkage.
Last one here for Legs and Love It or Shove. I want the last question you have on there, Bubs, because I really want to hear the answer to this.
All right. Legs could still win the NBA three-point contest today. Love it or shove it?
I'm going to say love it, but I have to put an asterisk, and I was just telling Golick this.
He was just showing me some video of him knocking down long-distance shot after shot. How many roads you make?
24 straight.
And you were like one step inside
the NBA three-point line. And the reason I bring that up is because this is probably the first time over the last couple of years that I really don't shoot that often anymore, but I can still make 15 to 19-foot jump shots all day long once you get 5 minutes of warm-up. You're going to make shots, as long as you're not moving around too much, right? But I recently had to do like an NBA three-point shooting thing, just like a demonstration. If you're not shooting those on a regular basis, it's a totally different world. When you go from like 19 feet out to 23 plus, and you're shooting those in rapid fire, I was pretty disappointed in my performance recently. But if I had time to practice it, and I dedicated a month to it,
so they told you right now, Legs, you're going to be in the three-point contest at the All-Star.
You have a little less than a month.
You gave me a month to go train every day. I would still feel confident that I could do that. And any shooter worth anything is going to say the same thing that I just said. You just believe in your ability to do it better than other people when it comes to that one thing. It's like, can I have that one thing that I was good at in my life? Can I at least have that I can still be confident in?
Sammy, thank you so much for spending an hour with us this morning.
Nice.
Always our pleasure to see you.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Let's bring Ron Jaworski into the conversation here on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. The new Simple 6 menu at Subway, 6 subs, 6 meals, just $6 each. Subway, eat fresh. And for those who only know Jaws as a terrific NFL analyst, you Some may not realize he played quarterback in the NFL at the very highest level for a really long time. So if anyone knows a little bit about handling the ball and all of that in cold weather, played in Philly, then it's Ron Jaworski. So, Jaws, I'll give you the floor. What is your take on the significance of this story involving this franchise, its historical greatness, and another trip to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, first of all, gentlemen, I've been doing this show with you guys for, I guess, since you've been doing the show, which is an awful long time. And I've never had the introduction to talk about deflated balls and shrinkage. So this is certainly a first. It is the world we live in, I guess. And there is no doubt. And I think Danny Cannell said it right. There is an advantage to having deflated footballs. In inclement weather, you can grip the football better, so there clearly is that advantage. Now, was the intent to deflate the footballs to give the Patriots an advantage? The league's going to have to figure that out. But obviously, 11 of the 12 footballs used in that game, underinflated, certainly points to some mischief going on.
So if we are to go forward, and again, Troy Vincent from the league said they figured another couple of days, probably by the end of this week, the investigation will be done. And if they find the Patriots guilty, Jaws, a team that had been trying to get out from under the Spygate situation to a lot of people thought, well, if they can win a Super Bowl after Spygate, that might legitimize them a little bit as opposed to what people think about them. What does this do now?
Yeah, it certainly taints the image of the Patriots once again if the league finds out that they were doing what we all kind of anticipate what was going on. That was deflating the footballs to gain an unfair advantage. We're supposed to play this game on a level playing field, and clearly they tried to tilt the field toward their sideline by deflating the football. So I think it will, if they go on and win the Super Bowl. We all know that it had no bearing on the outcome of that particular game against the Colts, but who knows, was it being done all along? I mean, you really don't know that, so it really does open up a can of worms. And I'm a big believer in integrity in every area of life, and if you lack integrity, it's hard to welcome that. If someone lacks integrity, trying to cheat at all costs, to win at all costs by cheating, it doesn't sit well with me, quite honestly.
All right, Mike and Ron Jaworski. So we'll continue to go in search of that. Bill Polian has suggested an answer to this problem. It seems almost too simple for belief. I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But let's get to the games themselves. Looking back, obviously, on what was an all-time thrilling finish in Seattle, take us through the way that the Seattle Seahawks came from having a 4% chance of winning to actually winning an NFC Championship game.
You guys know how much I enjoy, watching the tape and figuring out why things were done. And, we watch the game on TV and we see extraordinary plays and extraordinary players. And all too often, we don't give enough credit to the coaching staff. And I thought the Curse touchdown to win the football game in overtime was just beautifully called by Darrell Bevell. And to me, play calling is about probability, not certainty. You try to get a predictable coverage and attack that coverage. Now, in the overtime, they came out with two tight ends, two backs, one wide receiver. And they had actually showed that play one other time, that formation and personnel package, one other time early in the third quarter. So what they did is they filed what Green Bay was doing against that formation and personnel package. They filed it away for another time down the road that they would use it. Well, they used it in the overtime. They came out with two tight ends. They came out with two running backs. One was Tukuafu, who split out wide. Of course, Lynch and Wilson in the backfield. What that did, it forced the Packers to bring three safeties in the game. So one of their corners, Sam Shields, comes out of the game. It's a run formation. The Packers play it as a run. They come to the line of scrimmage. Russell Wilson sees it because the formation dictated it. And all of a sudden he drops back, and it's Curse for a 35-yard touchdown. They win the game. But to me, this is what coaches do. They put players in a position to be successful. To me, it pointed out that early in that third quarter, when they filed the formation and the coverage versus this personnel package, they came back to it in overtime and got the big play. Play calling is about probability, not certainty. They got the predictable coverage and beat it.
That's the positive side. The negative side with Green Bay, there are so many things that happen in that game that people question about the decisions made by the Packers, the coaching staff, and all. In your mind, what situation raised your eyebrows the most as to, I don't understand why they did that?
I think, Mike, as we watched the game, some were just very obvious. The onside kick, the fake field goal, the 2-point Hail Mary conversion. But I'm sitting here actually scratching my head because when I'm going through the tape yesterday, Clay Matthews was having a pretty darn good football game. In the last 7 minutes and 7 seconds of regulation, he wasn't on the field.
Right.
And I'm literally, the game wasn't won. Maybe they thought it was won. Maybe that's why he was off the field. They were saving him for the Super Bowl. But he wasn't on the field. The last play he was on with 7 minutes and 7 seconds left in the regulation. He came back and played in overtime. And I'm like flabbergasted. Why is this playmaker on the sideline with the game on the line? And it's kind of mind-boggling to me. And this is one I can't answer yet. Maybe the Packers eventually will answer it.
And you look at the All-22 all the time. I saw the picture. It was on Twitter everywhere yesterday. Morgan Burnett, the more you watch them, if you watch that play, do you think Morgan Burnett, if he doesn't voluntarily slide to the ground, is he going to score a touchdown?
It's going to be close. Now, quite honestly, I've looked at that play about 100 times with my staff at NFL Films, and we're trying to figure out angles and things like that. And obviously, when Burnett caught the football, Julius Peppers quickly told him to get down. If Julius Peppers would have turned around and blocked one of the offensive linemen for the Seattle Seahawks, the only guy that really could have made the play would have been Russell Wilson. I think eventually it would have been a first down around the 30, 25-yard line. I mean, these are hypothetical, but when you guys know it, when you have all those big guys on the field, that's why long field goals are, you always return because the big guys can't move like the little guys. So you're really going to have Morgan Burnett and Russell Wilson is the only guy left to stop him from scoring.
Ron Jaworski, you're the best, Jaws. Thank you. We'll see you next week in Phoenix.
You got it. Thank you, guys.
This has been the best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNradio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Why do we snack? Hunger? Taste? Because we have nothing better to do? Well, people who snack on almonds not only have something better to do, they're doing it. Almonds are heart health for those with heart. Packed with energy to keep up with anyone. It's that one-of-a-kind crunch that promises to keep you in the game for a long time to come. California almonds. Crunch on.